In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a lined zipper pouch out of embroidered fabric. In part 1, we'll make a bag with zipper tabs. This is my embroidered linen here, which I'll be using for the front, and this one I'll be using for the back. Now, deciding where to cut out your piece can be tricky. If I wanted to use a piece of paper to mark out a rectangular shape, I would have to know where to place it over my design. I'm just going to fold my paper to the size that I would like my pouch to be. But as you can see, positioning it over the top isn't easy because you can't see the design underneath. So instead, I'm going to use a transparent piece of tracing paper. You can see that it's so much easier to actually position and make a decision on how big or how wide you want your shape to be when you can see the design underneath. I'm just making sure that there's enough space at the top for the zipper, and I'm going to mark out the bottom somewhere around here. So I'm just going to fold my tracing paper to turn it into the shape and the size that I want my piece to be. Now I'm going to trace around that design so that I can cut it out easily. Now I'm going to reuse that tracing paper that I used for the front to position it over the back part and to mark out and cut out my next piece. Now that I've got my two pieces cut out, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the lining. Okay, now I've got my two outside pieces and two lining pieces. I'm also going to be using this piece of green linen for the zipper tabs. Here's my collection of zippers. I want to use something that's fairly neutral or matches one of the pieces of linen. I think this one will do. It looks like it matches that lining. Now my zipper is a little bit long, so I'm going to place it and I'm going to cut it there. Now I like to remove those two extra long bits at the end of the zipper. And then I'm going to place it, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the edge there. And then I'm going to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the other edge, so I'm going to cut my zipper to size. And don't worry about cutting it there because we're going to sew over the top of it to secure it. And these are the sorts of zipper tabs that we're going to be making out of this green linen here. To make my zipper tabs, I need a piece of green linen that's the same width as my zipper. So I'm going to mark it out and cut it out. Now I'm going to make my zipper tabs about the same size as these. So what we're going to do is first we're going to fold over about 1/2 inch seam. You just need to press it because linen is great like that. And then that width there is going to be the same as that width there. So I'm measuring very roughly here. As you can see, I haven't had the ruler out even once. Then I'm just going to fold it over. I just like to keep things simple. And then I'm going to open that up so that I know where to cut my first tab. Once you've cut that, we're just going to fold the other seam on the other side. Again, roughly 1/2 inch. And then once you fold it over, and there's our first little zipper tab. That's what it should. To make the second one, just cut it to the same size or the same length as the first one. And now just fold a 1/2 inch seam on one side, 1/2 inch seam on the other side, and then fold it in half. And it's great to use linen because it pinches so easily. I'll just fix up the first one again. There we go. You should have two zipper tabs that are the same width as your zipper. You're going to place your zipper tabs on each end of the zipper. And we just need to slightly unzip it so we've got space on that end. And I like to pin mine in place before I sew it. Now that the zipper tabs are secure, we're going to go ahead and sew. And this is what they look like once they've been sewn into place. Okay, now we're ready to start sewing the bag. put down your first lining piece, get your zipper and have it facing to the left. Place it over the top of the lining, making sure that it lines up at the top. Now get your first piece of embroidery and place it facing down, and again line it up at the top with the zipper and the piece of lining. Pin the whole top edge together and we're going to sew along this line. That's sewn, so you're going to place that down and open it up, and we're just going to flip it over so that the zipper is sticking out at the top. You just want to line your pieces up, making sure that they're nice and aligned. I like to just press mine down to make sure that everything is nice and flat. Then you're going to get your second piece of lining, place it down on the table, and again line the top of the zipper up with the top of the lining. Then get the back of your embroidery and place it facing down. So you want to make sure that your embroideries are facing each other. Once again, line that up at the top. Pin all the pieces together at the top and sew along that line. Now that you've got all 4 pieces sewn together, you're going to turn them out. I'm just going to close my zipper and I'm going to flatten it, iron it, and put 2 top stitches along the zipper. This is what your top stitches should look like. It just makes the whole thing look really neat. Now, this is the really important part. Open your zipper all the way through because you will need to put your hand through later on. We're just going to fold in the 2 front pieces and the 2 lining pieces together, and then you're going to pin the whole thing all the way around, but you're going to leave a gap so that your hand can fit through the lining part. This is the gap you'll need to leave at the top. Okay, I've sewn all the way around, making sure that I've left a gap big enough for my hand to fit through. Now you can see why we needed to open that zipper up on the inside. You're going to grab the whole thing and turn it inside out, and it's going to look like a real jumbled mess to start with. Just poke your hand in and make sure you get all the corners out. Poke out the little corners in the lining as well, even though they're only small. And then that gap is what we're going to sew closed. Here is my sewed line, and now I'm just going to stuff that inside. And don't be discouraged if at first the lining feels like it's too big. You've just got to keep poking around in there, push out those zipper tabs, just adjust it as much as possible. And you can give it a quick iron at the end if you like. I think that looks pretty good. Part 2, making a bag without the zipper tabs. This is an old piece of embroidery from many years ago, and I'm going to use both sides. I've already marked out a crease down the center so that I know the gaps between the 2 are fairly even. And once again, I'm going to use the tracing paper method that we used before. And I'm just going to make sure that the gap there is the same as the gap here. So I'll need to fold that tracing paper to make it a little bit smaller, because I don't want the design sitting sort of off center on one side. And then with this one, I've decided that I'm actually going to make it a rounded bottom zipper pouch instead of a square. So I'm going to fold that in half first. I'll get my pen, and then I'm just going to mark out like a quarter of a circle. As you can see, I'm sort of using my hand as a compass, kind of. Once I've marked that out, I'll go ahead and cut it. I'm also going to cut off that little side piece because we don't need it. It's just going to get in the way. Okay, now we've got our shape ready. We can place it over the top of the design, making sure that it lines up everywhere we want it to line up. And I've just noticed that my the bottom curve is not particularly smooth, so I'm just quickly fixing it up. There we go, that's better. Now that's lined up nicely, and I'm going to trace around that, flip it over, and then trace around my other design. And of course we're going to cut them out. I've got my embroidered pieces, my lining, and my zipper ready to go. Now the zipper is a little bit long, so I'm going to cut it. I've got my lining piece, and I'm just going to cut off those two bits at the end of the zipper, line it up with the width of that piece of lining, and then cut the end off as well. Next, I'm going to place my embroidered piece facing down. So you remember, just like we did in the first one, we're lining everything up at the top, pinning it, and then sewing along that line. Here's the sewn piece. We're going to open it up, flip it over, so that you've got your zipper sticking out at the top, and I always like to press it down a little bit. Next, we're going to get the other piece of lining and line up the top of the zipper with the top of the lining piece. Then you get your second piece of embroidery face down, and then again line it up at the top. So what you should have is two pieces of embroidery facing each other and two pieces of lining. Next, once again, we're going to pin the top and sew along that line. There's the sewn piece, and then you're going to open it up so that you've got the two lining pieces open and the two embroidered pieces open. Now we're just going to iron it so that we can sew two stitch lines on either side of the zipper. Now remember, this is the crucial part. You have to open the zipper at this point. Fold your two embroidered pieces together and your two pieces of lining together. And then we're going to pin all the way around, leaving that gap so that our hand can fit through. Now this part here can get a little bit tricky where the zipper is, and I actually forgot to show you in the previous video. So this is what you want to do. You want to fold your zipper in this way so that you're folding the outside of the fabric around the zipper like this. It's kind of hard to explain, but you can see what I'm doing here. That's how you're going to sew it. So now we're going to continue pinning it all the way around. And I'll show it to you once again on this side. We're doing exactly the same thing. I'm sort of pushing with my finger in there so that I can fold that zipper in half and then fold that front fabric over. So we'll just keep pinning, and remember that gap that we need to leave at the top. Now you're going to go and sew all the way around. Here's our sewing line, and here's that important gap that we talked about, and you can see now why we needed to leave that zipper open. So you're going to turn the whole thing inside out, and just like before with our other bag, it's going to look like a big floppy mess. Just keep pushing the seams out on the inside, and then this is the bit that we need to sew closed. There we go. Just a quick stitch on the sewing machine. Now I'm going to push that inside and keep sort of straightening it out on the inside. Keep pushing out all the seams and push out the parts where the zippers are on the side. Now I'm sure that there are much more sophisticated ways of finishing off a zipper pouch. This is my preferred method because it's quick and easy and I get an instant result. It's by no means perfect, but it certainly works for me and I find it quite easy to do. And I think the finish is actually pretty good. Now let's just have a quick look at some other zipper pouches that I made in the past. So this one here has 2 zipper tabs, as you can see, and this is the one from the Alicia pattern, which comes with the journal cover instructions. This pattern here is called Nola, and as you remember, we only just did this one. No zipper tabs there. Now both of these zipper tabs are pretty good. They're okay, they're certainly not perfect, and they do get quite bulky around the edges, so if you're having trouble sewing yours on the sewing machine, you can actually finish them off by hand as well. You can see mine are not exactly perfect. I've added zipper tabs here as well. These ones are much smaller, and this is the Maria pattern. It's actually got Maria written on the side there. You can add a lovely little tag like that to any of your zipper pouches. I think it looks beautiful. And this one I finished off a little bit differently on the bottom. Now let's have a quick look inside, because lining these bags is one of my favorite things to do, and I always line them with a contrasting color on the inside. I think there's something quite magical and mysterious about opening a little bag like that, and the color on the inside is very different to what is on the outside. And I always try to match it or somehow complement what's on the inside to something on the design on the outside. Now this is the Alicia pattern, which is the journal cover and pencil case. And you can certainly make that from the PDF that I have available. And then this design that we just finished off is called Kylie, and previously I actually made a journal cover for the Kylie pattern as well. Now I've decided that I'm going to keep my coloured pencils inside my new pouch because it matches the journal cover that I did for it. And the Alicia pencil case will just hold a bunch of random pens and pencils for my journal. Now the Maria bag is much bigger than all the others, and I like to put my jewellery in this one. I actually travel with this bag a lot and I love carrying my jewellery in there. Got quite an extensive necklace collection, and I think it looks gorgeous. I hope you found this tutorial inspiring and helpful. Until next time.